Yamiche, I start with you. A very scripted day from this White House to speak to the mounting angst and heat from Democratic activists and leaders in the state. Talk about this sort of 1-2 punch, if you will, the vice president's speech and this meeting that just got underway a few moments ago with civil rights leaders.
Well, the president and vice president are juggling a lot, but they want to remind Americans today that their priority remains on voting rights and it remains on securing access to democracy across this country. Let's remember that Republicans are leaning in on this strategy that is based on a lie that there was widespread voter fraud on the 2020 election when we know that there wasn't. But Republicans are really also making the political risk, the political calculus, that if they talk enough about critical race theory, they talk enough about voting, they talk enough about transgender rights and attacking the rights of people who are just trying to live their lives in the way that they were born, that will animate their voters and that they can even try to change some of the voting laws in this country if they just try hard enough and try through the state legislatures to pass these laws. And of course, Democrats are facing a real conundrum here, which is that the Supreme Court has signaled that they're not going to be stopping these voting rights laws. The Congress is not at all signaling that they're going to be able to pass voting rights laws. So you have to have the vice president out saying, here's the offensive strategy of the Democrats. We're going to spend money on educating people. We're going to spend money on trying to invest in the voting systems that we have. And in the meantime, there's, of course, this two-pronged effort, as you said, to try to get something legislatively done. There's also, of course, the courts and the DOJ trying to go after these laws. But this was a day where you could imagine that the White House is juggling Afghanistan and juggling issues with Haiti and all of those other things. But they're also trying to remind Americans and especially progressive Democrats that they're not forgetting about voting rights on a day like today.
Charlie Sykes, the irony is that without action on voting rights, Democrats won't be the ones in charge of any of these other issues for a generation. What the Republicans are doing, and Yamiche is right, they're pushing laws about critical race theory. They want to talk about transgender sports. But if they succeed in changing and rigging access to the polls, it won't matter what Democrats have to say about U.S. foreign policy. It won't matter how effective the massive vaccination campaign was between January and June. It won't matter if they can't win elections in states like Georgia and Arizona and Texas.
Well, I'm really struck by the asymmetry here. The Republicans clearly have a game plan, and they're willing to embrace these tinfoil hat conspiracy theories. It is interesting watching the crazy spread like some sort of a weird pandemic to places like Pennsylvania. It's become the litmus test now that you have to have an audit. You're seeing it in Wisconsin. You're seeing the Arizona fraud being used as a model. But I have to say, then I understand, I take Yamiche's point about all the things that the White House has to juggle today. But there is a rather extraordinary lack of real focus and urgency on the part of the Democrats to deal with this, including the failure to really focus on, the other aspect of this, not just the access to the ballot box, but the possibility of nullifications of elections, the power of state legislatures to overturn the election, the electoral vote counting act that might allow a Republican Congress to set aside the winner of an actual election. So, they seem to go through the motions and sort of, wave their hands at it. But it really does feel kind of like going through the motions as opposed to a real sense of urgency. A full court press would involve compromise legislation you can get through the Senate, more aggressive action by the Department of Justice, and a much more aggressive approach by the White House, including the president and the vice president. And quite frankly, I know we're supposed to think that they're addressing it today, but I actually think that what you just played sort of highlighted the contrast between the Republicans at ramming speed and the Democrats sort of not quite figuring out what they want to do here.
I co-sign everything you just said, and I've had to move in a fire extinguisher for my hair being on fire. Nick's been writing about this for 6 months. Because it is malevolent, it's hard to ascribe praise to the GOP national campaign, but it is extraordinary. It is efficient. It is effective. And they are barreling through norms that even they didn't think they could get through. You're talking about the voter nullification stuff. That was a pipe dream in November. They have added more audacious measures to the state laws as they have steamrolled them through state legislatures without any serious conversation in Washington about doing anything. The reason they announced $25 million for the DNC is to help Democrats navigate the new laws as though they are sort of a foregone conclusion that they'll all pass. And Nick, I want to read to you something about this nullification point, because I think this is something that the reporting such as yours first brought to focus at a national level, that in Georgia, it's about disempowering the kind of people, most of them Republicans, who walk the line regarding the November election results. Let me read this to you, Nick. It may well be time for Congress to act to make voting rules more consistent nationwide. But the biggest threat to democracy now is less that voting laws are too restrictive than it is that votes once lawfully cast are counted and the results accepted by losers as well as winners. The strength of democracy rests on the acceptance of election results, win or lose. Laws currently under consideration that would throw election results into question and allow state legislatures to reject them are a serious problem that undermines the future of our democracy. It seems that if Democrats can't get angry enough to protect their core voters' right to vote, they should get angry enough to protect the will of all voters and the capacity as a country to have any sort of transfer of power.
Well, yeah, when you look at a lot of the bills that have been put through that are, bringing new restrictions on voting, it's almost always hand in hand with a restructuring of power within state houses, within counties, about who is going to be administering these elections. In Georgia, the Secretary of State has been stripped of some of his power. Same with Arizona. In Georgia, some of the local county election boards have been restructured. You've seen women of color, Democrats being removed from county boards. And these are the places where the actual election decisions are made, where hours are set, where, decisions on where precinct locations will go. And there's been this kind of fear that everything that held the line in 2020 after President Trump tried to overturn the results, whether it was in Michigan standing up against trying to block the certification, whether it was in Detroit where they stopped the poll watchers from gaining access, in all of these cities and all these areas where they tried to either stop counting or try and overturn the results, there were these checks that made sure our election held. And the big fear right now is when you look at a lot of these bills and what's been passed and what's kind of become a new law in these different states, is that might look like just a dress rehearsal, and some of those checks have been removed. And so a big fear is if those checks are removed and we already have a party that went through this once, what's to say that they could be stopped again?